Welcome to the Trail and Ultra Running Training Podcast. My name is Will Franz, and I'm here to help you improve your training so you can have more fun out on the trails. This week, I want to talk about 5 lessons I got from UTMB, and I know it was a big weekend. We saw a lot of incredible performances. Jim taking the first male title at the race in 20 years, and Courtney winning a third one at the end of a powerhouse of a summer. But that just overlooks, if there's been so much focus on those two, and I'm guilty of it as well. But this overlooks everybody from the Katarina, the woman who came in second for the women, and she's young and she's this big career in front of her, and I think it's going to explode and it's going to be incredible to watch. The CCC was incredibly competitive. It was a great weekend if you are a fan of this sport. If you just love to run, that's wonderful. But if you're a fan of this sport, it was fun to watch and learn and see what the future kind of looks like and where we are. So let's look at 5 lessons I got from paying attention to it this weekend. I did not watch a ton of it. I'm very honestly not a watch a sports on TV guy. But I did keep very tight tabs and listened to all of the probably 40 podcasts that Dylan Bowman put out on Free Trail with interviews and recaps and everything. So one lesson I got, and it's a big one that we can probably take from every experience ever in the world of running, but it is just patience and the need to play the long game in this sport. And this is very easily exemplified this past weekend by Jim, and the fact that he has wanted this for a long time. I think he has done this race 4 times. Twice he got 4th once and 5th another time, and then 2 DNFs, and he couldn't close it. So last year, he moved to France, and he started training there. And he said it was going to be a 2-year project, and he was right. And let's look at, Jim didn't need to do that, right? You don't win a ton of money from UTMB. If we're going to look at something like the Boston Marathon, where your prize is in the 6 figures, the Chicago Marathon prize is in the 6 figures, and then same with along the world Ironman championships, prizes in the 6 figures. Here, I think they win $10,000 or $15,000. I wrote an email on this where I actually looked it up. I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head. It's not a lot. It's nothing to scoff at, but it's certainly not a large sum of money to dedicate 2 years of your life towards, right? Most people are not going to live on 10 grand. So to basically dedicate 2 years of your life to doing that is kind of a big deal beyond the monetary perspective. We can also say that yes, UTMB builds a career, but it's not like Jim needed that. He has 3 of the top 5 records at Western States. He didn't need to build a name for himself. He already has a name for himself. He just wanted it. And I think this patience concept is really easily seen here. He wanted a goal. He moved, and credit to his wife who, as Jim says, sacrificed way more than he did. He was at least chasing his goal. They both missed their friends in Flagstaff, but she wasn't trying to get this career making race. So they both moved to France. They say that they want to split time back and forth now, but he's been dedicated for 18 months, and it has been incredible to see all of that come to fruition. But Jim's not the only one that put in a ton of time on the long game of this race, or didn't get to. We see Katie Asmuth. She didn't even start CCC. She had an amazing performance at Western States, but apparently the stress fracture that she got a while ago, I think it was a stress fracture, I know it was a fracture, hasn't fully healed. So after Western States, some things were tweaky. She went to the doctor, and she's still injured. So even after she got, I think, 4th at Western States, she had to pull out of this race that she's been training for a very long time. And then back to Jim. He got injured, also on the injury train, back in May, and pretty much he had a no-run month in May, which, not running at all 4 months prior to something you've been training for over a year at that point is terrifying. I can't imagine. But he ruined a couple of ligaments in his legs. He had pretty much a no-run month in May. He dropped out of Worlds, got on the bike, spent a ton of time on the bike, got back to it, and it paid off. But we have to take this long game, take this perspective, and if we can all just I know we're not working 2 years towards winning UTMB. It's usually smaller goals, but a lot of them are big for us. When I finally decide to sign up for 100, that's going to be a big deal. And I hope to have some of the same patience and foresight and dedication that you see in these incredibly high-level athletes. Their training doesn't need to look the same, but we can still take that lesson. And in all of that, I think that brings me to my second point of ask for help. None of these people did this alone. We already mentioned Jess and her support of Jim. Kevin is notoriously a huge supporter of Courtney. From what I understand, he makes these very detailed spreadsheets, and everything is very lined out to the T, and make sure that she's well taken care of. All of the people, if you hear them interviewed by Dylan Bowman, talked about their crew. And when they talked about who they were choosing for their crew, it was always someone who knew them really well, right? And that seemed to be a bigger point of picking a good crew than almost anything else. A lot of these people, they know the ultra world because they're in it, they're attached to these high, very important athletes, but they're not necessarily runners themselves. Some of them were, but some of them just know their person the best. And I think that's a really important thing. We all need a little help, be that a crew that really knows you, a coach. Jim talked about getting help from people like Francois and trying to understand the mountains that had defeated him so many times. We all need some of that assistance. So don't be afraid to ask for help if you're going for big goals. Be that training help, or hey, could you please watch my dog for a minute while I go for this run that I need to go for? And all of us need a little support. This sport is nutty. It takes a lot of time. It's not an Ironman. It's even worse. But this sport takes a lot of time, and especially if in your peak week. And it takes a lot of sacrifice, not just from you, but from the people around us. And I think if we take a second to recognize that and really appreciate that, maybe even more than we already do, and then ask for the help that we need, but also be willing to give back when the race is over, that's a really important thing to find success in this. And one of the things that I noted and will continue to just be in awe about when it comes to Courtney is her ability to know her body and understand her training. So Courtney doesn't have a coach. She coaches herself, which is impressive. And I think if you understand the physiology and understand yourself well enough, that's arguably best. It takes a while to get there. You have to be willing to experiment and suffer and go through it. I personally think it's a great idea to ask someone else to help you along the way so we can learn from other people's mistakes. And that said, you still have to take an active part in the process. I always struggle with people, be it in my in-person gym job or online, when they want a very specific thing, and I ask them how it felt, and they tell me I don't know. I don't know what you feel, right? This is not a thing I do, and this is a thing I cannot tell you what muscles you're feeling or what engagement there is, or why you're suffering when you're climbing a hill. Is it your legs or your lungs that are rough? That gives us an indicator of what we need to do next. How rough were they? Could you breathe? Could you speak a sentence? All of these things. And you also have to be able to wake up and figure out how you're doing that morning. This is one of the things that you'll hear from some interviews with Courtney is she wakes up, she has a cup of coffee, and kind of assesses her training for the day. And I think that is such an important ritual that we should all have some version of. I think we get separated because we have like rings and watches and straps and whatever that we rely on so much to figure out where we are. And hey everyone, I've decided to stop doing ads for this podcast, at least for the time being. I just don't think they're a good use of anybody's time. So instead of that, I just have a simple ask. If you find this information valuable, please tell someone about it. Either hit the like or subscribe buttons on your preferred platform, share it with somebody, or you could even just head over to the Trail and Ultra Running Training Group on Facebook, and I'd appreciate that as well. I'm just trying to make more good, free information for people so we can all get better at running on the trails. And if we can spread the tribe, that would be great. Thank you, and let's get to the podcast. It's not that those things aren't helpful, but they should be a guide or like an assistant in you figuring out how to get in touch with your body. If your watch tells you that your heart rate is 185, and you are breathing super easy and you know that your max heart rate's 195, something is wrong. Don't follow that heart rate data. It's lying to you. The data isn't correct. If we look at, so I used to wear an Oura ring. I've been kind of off and on with it. A couple videos ago, I was probably still wearing it. And watching Courtney and thinking about this kind of made me stop wearing it again because it's not teaching me anything anymore. It was very helpful when I was working night shift. It was very helpful to like help me connect patterns with my daily activities and my daily rituals to how I was sleeping and how I was performing. But I'm not getting any of that benefit anymore. I'm just not. And I think it had become, as a lot of our technology does, more of a crutch than a tool. And if we are waking up and looking at our watch data or looking at our ring or finishing a run and your watch tells you that you are being unproductive and you get really caught up in that because you don't know how you feel and you just have to run off of your watch data based on what it tells you, and you're being unproductive. No, you're probably peaking and then going into a taper, but your watch is an idiot because it doesn't actually know anything. It just takes algorithmic data and spits out a response to you. If we have these negative responses or aren't putting them to good use, then maybe we ditch the tech for a minute and try to reconnect with our body. One of the primary reasons that athletes like Courtney or love 'em or hate 'em, Tom Brady, like these people have such long careers and are so successful is because they spend a lot of time figuring out how they feel and what their body is doing, and they can detect like small little tweaks like, oh, my foot feels a little worse than yesterday, maybe I need to make some adjustments. Oh, my diet's a little off because of this. Like, the more you can connect to your body's own natural rhythms and biofeedback signals, the better off you'll be, because then you're not dependent on anything else and you're not dependent on shoddy, half-baked data to figure out what your training should be. If you wake up and you feel like garbage, I don't care how well your like ring or watch told you slept, you're probably not ready to like do the heaviest lifting session of your life or the biggest hill sprint workout of your entire training stack. Like, maybe, probably not. If you wake up and you feel great, but your ring or watch tells you that you slept badly, it's probably wrong. I can tell you for one thing, like Oura Rings doesn't make rings in half sizes. My fingers are more half-sized. So it spins a lot in my sleep and gets kind of shoddy data. So the best sleep I've ever gotten in my life is somewhere in the 80s, even when I woke up feeling fantastic. So if I'm never going to be very good on the sleep front, in the 80s were like high, usually much lower than that. I'm never going to like be very good on the sleep front and constantly think I'm sleeping badly. How do I train for anything? How do I like do anything? You have to be able to like recognize how you actually feel. Now, once we have that, we need to know when, like, when it's okay to push through the struggles. And this was a thing that I really saw, that I think we all saw at UTMB. All of these athletes in the front, and more as we get through the years, like there's no more, like, I mean, relatively speaking, sure, but there's no more like pacing at mile 1. You're not taking a conservative race strategy if you're trying to get on the podium. From like mile 0 to 106, these people were crushing themselves. And Jim at the finish line, it's like, how long have you been feeling badly? And he's like, oh, a really long time, or something like that. Like, and then if you watch Zach Miller race, like he's just almost frantic. It's like a controlled chaos out there on the trail. And Courtney's even flagging at the end. Like if you watch her coming up the hill, like I realize we all call her superhuman, but she's tired. Of course she's tired. She did one of the most impressive things I've ever seen this summer. And like this triple. And it's a lot. If you're trying to perform at your best, at your highest level, like you are going to have to push through some suffering. And this is a thing that I talk to a lot with people who are trying to get faster or get better or make improvements. Like, you are not going to get faster very quickly if you don't run faster. And a lot of the time, running fast is hard. Like, talk to anybody who races 5Ks, the entire thing sucks from like 200 meters in to the end. So 3 straight miles is awful. And if we're doing something like a VO2 max interval to try to improve your speed, then one, you should get your pacing right, because you don't need to go all out. You need to go like mile pace for 3 to 4 minutes. So it shouldn't be insufferable, but should be pretty deeply unpleasant for like 3 to 4 minutes. And you can improve that by going long and low and slow and building volume, but it takes a lot longer. If we're going to see someone who's going to get faster, like a training program that's going to make you faster based almost solely on volume, is going to be something like Andy Glaze, where he runs like 100 plus miles a week at an 11 to 12 minute mile, which for him is normal. And he just runs forever. And he does tons of mileage every week. He doesn't watch television, he doesn't drink, he doesn't do these other things that most of us do, at least a little bit. He runs. He works and he runs and he hangs out with his partner. And most of the rest of us don't want to necessarily wait that long or put in that much time. Our bodies might not be built for it. If I put that amount of volume on me, I break. I'm more of a fast twitch athlete. I respond better to faster things, more intensity and less volume. Obviously, if we're running ultras, you still need to be going far. But I don't think my body is really the 100-mile-a-week person. I'd be shocked if that were in any way beneficial. And for most of us, I mean, even from a time standpoint, I'm not sure I could make it happen. I know I couldn't right now. Now, for most of us, like, we also want just a little more expedited processes. So if we want to go faster, we need to go faster, and that means you're going to have to push through some stuff. And this is also true on your race, that if we need to go faster, then, or if you want to win, or if you want to make that goal that you're going to be just on the cusp of, like, I was suffering pretty hard at the end of the 50-miler I did last year, but I ran the last 3 miles because I wanted to at least make my B goal. Like, my A goal was long gone, partially due to, poor aid station management and partially due to ankle sprains and all sorts of good reasons. But B goal, I knew I was going to be close. And if I ran the last 3 miles, even though the ankle was a little worse for wear, I could make it. And I did. I made it under my B goal. So it sucked though, for the record. And if you want to make some of these goals, you are going to have to push when you don't necessarily want to. And it doesn't mean you ever have to. Set your goals before you go into the race so you know what really matters to you. Because if you don't, it's going to be really easy to just say, no, let's go get a pizza at the aid station. And on that note, I'm going to say the 5th thing is just take it one step at a time. And this is largely like Courtney's whole summer. If you watched her on like podcasts or interviews back in May and June, she was putting her entire focus on Western states. And once she destroyed that course, she put her focus on hard rock and didn't sign up for UTMB. And then once she got that, she did the next thing. Like, don't get so hung up about, I realize we're taking a long-term perspective, and yes, your training races are training races, so we have to make sure that we're not trying to win the training race in order to like sacrifice our performance at the A race, but take it one step at a time. By focusing on your performance at 100 in 3 months, you are not going to get the most out of your 50K prep race in 6 weeks. Like, make sure that we still focus along the way. Every mile counts. Every mile builds to the next one. So no matter what, like, focus on where you are, take it one step at a time, and they add up. So those are the 5 things I learned. Like, be patient and ask for some help. Know your body. Push through when you need to, and then take it one step at a time. So that is what I got for you this week, or today. I actually plan to make another one of these over the weekend. I hope you have a really good night, and I will be back with another one soon. Thank you for listening to the Trail and Ultra Running Training Podcast. Honestly, I'm still surprised and honored that anybody wants to hear what I have to say, so thank you. To be clear, not a doctor, nor a registered dietitian, or any other kind of medical professional. I'm a personal trainer, a nutrition coach, and a running coach, and I have a passion for training trail runners. You should always speak with a qualified medical professional before making any changes to your training or nutrition program. If you enjoyed the podcast or found it helpful, please take a second to leave a rating or review. I'd really appreciate it, or you could just share it with someone for whom you think it might be helpful. I make these kinds of things in order to provide more quality, free resources to people, so the more people who hear it, the better. If you want more of this information, please head to the Trail and Ultra Running Training group on Facebook, where we discuss all aspects of training so you can have more fun doing the sport that you love. Thank you again for listening.